We're down to the final few weeks of the baseball season, and it's time to look at the roster and decide who's going to stay and who's going to go. And one of those guys that is up in the air is Cody Bellinger. Cubs signed him in the offseason. He's got an opt-out. He can become a free agent. Is it the Wrigley Field weather that has caused him not to have an MVP-type season? Well, we're going to get into that and what it would mean to the Cubs if he stayed, what it would mean if he goes, and what I think is going to happen and what I think's best for the Cubs. Thanks for hanging with us on the Cubs Baseball channel. Like and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. Thanks for hanging, and let's get this thing started with a huge Go Cubs. What do you say, guys? Mick Gillespie here, Cubs Baseball channel, and it is a pleasure to welcome you to the platform today and invite you to follow at Broadcaster Mick. All right, let's get into this right now. Cody Bellinger could become a free agent if he decided to opt out of his Cubs contract. And, you know, the season for Cody has not been terrible, but it hasn't been MVP-type caliber season. He could opt out at $2.5 million, right? And then become a free agent. Or he can take the $27.5 million and stick around for another season. And the question that he's got to ask himself is that, is the market going to reward him for walking away? Last year, we had Marcus Stroman in a similar situation, and he didn't get more money, but he got a better long-term deal with the Yankees, and it's been a pretty good fit for Stroman in New York. Now, Bellinger could be a guy who ends up in New York, but maybe not with the Yankees, but with the Mets. You know, we'll find out. And you see some reports that say maybe the Mets are interested, and I think other teams are going to be interested as well. But, you know, last year he hit 307. This year he's hitting 366. The power numbers, although I thought he had an excellent series against the Dodgers, played with a lot of fire and passion, haven't equated to what we saw him do in L.A. and what he did last year. He hasn't been nearly as clutch for the Cubs. And the other problem that he has on the roster is there's really no spot for him anymore. And you're going, well, how come there's no spot for the guy that you expected to be the star player on your team? And it's because the Cubs have gone young. Pete Crow Armstrong, who we have debated on this channel since he came up, I gave him my stamp of approval. It was a long and arduous road to becoming a great player for Pete Crow Armstrong. He's still battling, but you guys are starting to see him emerge as one of the most exciting players in baseball and a top 10 rookie this year, making great plays in the field. He's starting to hit. He can steal bases, all the stuff that we talked about. Hollywood Pete. And if you didn't watch the LA series, you probably don't get that. But I told you last year that the guy was Hollywood, and he went to LA and he lived up to that. But he's been trying to break in to normalcy all year long, and he took the center field job from Bellinger. Remember Bellinger, they sent Pete Crow Armstrong back, and then he kind of, whatever. He's much better defensively. So now what do you do with Bellinger? Maybe you put him at first base. Well, the problem there is that Michael Busch is at first base, and he's done great for a rookie, and he's growing into that position, and he's much more affordable for the Cubs, and you traded for him. You gave up some pretty good young players to get him. Those two rookies, Pete Crow Armstrong and Michael Busch, play the same positions that you have with Bellinger. So now what do you do with him? Well, you put him at DH. The problem with that is that there's another rookie coming that's going to take the right field spot, and you can mark my words on this, and I know you guys will be in the comments section. You'll be hammering me when he struggles. Rookies struggle, okay? But when the guy gets it figured out, he's going to be the everyday right fielder for, I think, a long time, and I'm talking about Owen Casey, the one of the best Canadian outfielders ever drafted, right? And a guy who I think has the potential to be a really solid piece for the Cubs. I don't know if he's going to be a superstar, but I think he's going to be a really good player, and he's consistent, and he's going to be a really good player for a long time. But he's much better defensively than, say, a Suzuki. So then what do you do with Suzuki? Well, you put him at DH. Well, now what do you do with Bellinger? One of the problems that I have with this entire roster is that there's not a lot of flexibility with the contracts that are signed. Everyone's signed. And if Bellinger opts in, and we're going to talk about that here in a second, what are the Cubs going to do with some of these rookies? So you got Ian Happ signed. You've got Pete Crow Armstrong, who is still, in a rookie deal. You got Seiya Suzuki signed. And then if you have Bellinger, well, there's your 4 outfielders. What about Mike Tauchman, right? Who I don't know, to me, is a long-term solution. He could be a guy that we don't have on the team next year because of all the young players that I'm going to get to in a second. So then you go to the infield, and you've got Paredes traded for him. He signed. Dansby Swanson got an enormous deal that, to be honest with you, he has not lived up to yet. Hopefully he does. Nico Horner signed. Michael Busch signed. You got some flexibility at the catcher spot, although I got to admit, Miguel Amaya showed me a lot more than I thought that he was capable of, and that's good. Hey, look, I want to be wrong. I hope he turns into the next Wilson Contreras, someone that the Cubs can really count on, and maybe they can hit and catch a little bit behind the plate. But there's some flexibility at that spot. Then you got, backups that you're going to move out. I wouldn't expect Tauchman and Wisdom and those kind of guys to be there. I mean, because you got too many young players now, like Owen Casey, that you got to put in the big leagues, that you got all these guys stacked up in AAA. And it just feels like this roster doesn't really match the organization. But we'll find out. I mean, that it just feels like that. Maybe there's a plan that I don't see. You could go out and make trades. Obviously, there's some value with some of these guys. Some of them don't have have no trade clauses, like Ian Happ. But the bottom line is this: if Cody Bellinger doesn't opt out, and his agent Scott Boras, talking about the weather and this and that, why he hasn't produced, there's always an excuse out there. Why didn't get the bigger contract last year? It's the Wrigley Field weather. Andre Dawson and Ryan Sandberg seemed to hit just fine there. Sammy Sosa hit just fine there. Chris Bryant, Javi Baez hit fine there when they were in their primes. Rizzo hit fine there. Schwarber hit fine there. So I don't know. Now, do I like Cody Bellinger? Man, of course I do. But is he a $30 million player for you? Or could you take that $30 million or 27, whatever, and do better with it in other areas? Maybe get an elite starting pitcher, an ace to go with Justin Steele or whoever. I think that would be a better move. My gut feeling is that Bellinger opts out. I think the market will be there for him. I think the problem with the deal that he has is that it bottoms out after this next year, right? But he still has good value. I mean, he's still a good player. And don't get me wrong, I still think he's one of the better players, if not arguably the best player on the Cubs team. But, with that said, this is an opportunity for him maybe to get his last big contract, big payday. And he didn't sign this contract thinking that if there was an option to do something else, he wasn't going to do it. And I think part of that too is if you're the Cubs, you kind of are hoping that he opts out because it gives you some roster flexibility. And another team could be looking and going, hey, we love the left-handed bat. I know he's only batting 249 at home and he's hitting 280 on the road. We bring him in. I mean, look at how well he played with the Dodgers. Could he have an LA Dodgers return? He's still got some gas left in the tank. There's no doubt about it. But the bottom line is that for this roster where we are right now, it would benefit the Cubs if he opted out. It would give them more roster flexibility. And as we get into the free agency market and you look at how this team's configured, if he stays, then I think you're going to have to trade some guys because you can't have all those prospects sitting in AAA and not give them the opportunity to get to the big leagues. It takes time to get good at the major leagues. This is the worst minor league baseball has probably been in the last 50 years as far as developing players to play the game. They've taken the competitiveness out of baseball. That's why you see all these guys go to college, because the games count. I give the Cubs organization a lot of credit, and I'm going to give it to Jared Banner for going out there and saying, hey, we still want to try to win. That was something that we didn't see with Theo Epstein, and we're seeing it again, and I think that's going to benefit the Cubs, because you got a whole bunch of guys in AAA that have won championships all the way up the chain, kind of what the Cardinals used to do, and it always seemed to translate when they got into the postseason. So maybe the Cubs are going to do that as well. So we'll find out what happens, guys. Get in the comments section. Tell me what you think. Do you think Cody Bellinger is a better fit? Do you think that the Cubs are better off if he opts in, if he doesn't opt out, and then maybe you trade somebody else? Could you move some of these guys? Who would you move? Would you trade Seiya Suzuki? Could you convince Ian Happ to go somewhere else? I don't think you'd move Pete Crow Armstrong. I guess Mike Tauchman would be someone that, wouldn't make the team. I thought that it was borderline for him last year, but you're another year into this with him, and there's not a whole lot of roster spots when it comes to having, all of these prospects that are going to need major league time in AAA, or maybe you trade those guys away. We'll talk about that as the offseason starts up. But anyway, like and subscribe, give us a thumbs up. Thanks for hanging out, and we appreciate it. Right here, as always, on the Cubs Baseball Channel.